I never thought I'd be starting from scratch at 25. But here I was, staring at an English textbook, feeling like I was back in primary school. My name is Alejandro, and this is the story of how I decided to change my life by learning English. It all started when I was passed over for a promotion at work. "We need someone with better English skills," my boss had said. Those words stung, but they also lit a fire under me. That night, I made a promise to myself. In 1 year, I'd be fluent enough to nail that promotion. My first English class was a disaster. I walked in confidently, only to realize I couldn't even introduce myself properly. Me, Alejandro. I stammered, feeling my cheeks burn. Our teacher, Ms. Marie, smiled encouragingly. "It's okay," she said. "Let's start with my name is." That first lesson, we learned basic greetings and introductions. I practiced saying, "Hello, my name is Alejandro," until my tongue felt numb. The tch sound was my nemesis. No matter how much I tried, they kept coming out as duh. But I was determined. I went home and practiced in front of the mirror for hours. Establishing a study routine was harder than I thought. Between work and family commitments, finding time seemed impossible. But I was committed. I started waking up an hour earlier each day to study. I discovered the power of flashcards and language learning apps. Every spare moment, I was flipping through cards or tapping on my phone, learning new words. Perseverance. I learned one day. It became my mantra. The frustration was real, though. Words I thought I knew would slip away when I needed them most. One day, trying to describe my job to a classmate, I completely blanked on the word engineer. It was disheartening, but I pushed on. I decided to surround myself with English. I started watching movies with English subtitles. At first, it was overwhelming. The characters spoke so fast. But gradually, I began to catch words, then phrases. I felt a thrill every time I understood something without reading the subtitles. My commute became an English lesson. I listened to podcasts, repeating phrases under my breath. My fellow bus passengers probably thought I was crazy, but I didn't care. I was learning. In a bold move, I changed my phone's language settings to English. It was confusing at first, but it forced me to learn new words quickly. Who knew settings could be such an important word? 3 months in, I felt ready for a real conversation. I joined a language exchange program and met Sarah, a native English speaker learning Spanish. Our first meeting was awkward, lots of nervous laughter and long pauses. But Sarah was patient, correcting my mistakes gently. It was through Sarah that I started learning colloquialisms. "What's up?" she'd say, and I'd look at the ceiling in confusion. We laughed about it later, but these little phrases were gold. They made me feel less like a textbook and more like a real English speaker. Ms. Marie suggested I start reading in English. Start small, she advised. So I did with The Cat in the Hat. It was humbling, struggling through a children's book at 25. But it worked. I moved on to young adult novels, then to newspapers. Reading opened up a new world. I was learning vocabulary and context, which made it stick better. Words like meticulous and exuberant became part of my growing English arsenal. I felt a sense of pride with each book I finished. Inspired by my reading progress, I decided to start a blog about my language learning journey. My first post was riddled with errors, but I hit publish anyway. To my surprise, people read it. Other language learners left encouraging comments, sometimes correcting my mistakes. Writing forced me to think in English. I struggled with grammar, especially those pesky prepositions. But with each post, I improved. I learned the difference between in, on, and at, and celebrated when I used them correctly. 6 months in, I was progressing well, but my pronunciation still betrayed me. I decided to work with a speech coach. We spent hours on sounds that don't exist in Spanish. The sound finally clicked when she had me put my tongue between my teeth. Intonation was another challenge. In Spanish, my voice naturally went up at the end of questions. In English, I learned it often goes down. It felt unnatural at first, but I practiced relentlessly. The breakthrough came when I ordered coffee without the barista asking me to repeat myself. It was a small victory, but it felt huge. With my growing confidence, I started attending English language meetups. It was intimidating at first, being surrounded by fluent speakers. But I pushed myself to join conversations, even when I wasn't sure of my words. I made friends from the US, UK, Australia, and other English-speaking countries. Each brought their own flavor of English. I learned that elevator in the US is lift in the UK, and that Australians have a whole dictionary of slang. These friendships taught me that language is more than vocabulary and grammar. It's about connection, about understanding not just words, but the culture behind them. As I approached the 1-year mark of my English journey, I took stock of my progress. I wasn't perfect, but I was fluent. I could hold conversations, read novels, write blog posts, and even joke in English. I thought back to that first class, when I could barely introduce myself. Now I was helping new students, sharing tips and encouragement. The journey had changed me in ways I hadn't expected. I was more confident, not just in English, but in all aspects of my life. My boss noticed the change too. Last week, he called me into his office. I felt a flutter of nerves, remembering our conversation a year ago. But this time he smiled. "Alejandro," he said, "your English has improved tremendously. We'd like to offer you that promotion." I accepted, of course. But as I left his office, I realized something. the promotion wasn't the win. The real victory was the journey itself, the people I'd met, the challenges I'd overcome. Learning English hadn't just changed my career. It had opened up a whole new world. As I look to the future, I have new goals. I want to read Shakespeare in the original English. I want to write a novel. I want to travel to English-speaking countries and blend in like a local. But most of all, I want to keep learning. Because that's the secret I discovered in this journey. Learning never stops. Each day brings new words, new phrases, new opportunities to grow. So here I am, 26 years old, bilingual, and ready for whatever comes next. To anyone out there thinking of learning a new language, I have one piece of advice. Just start. It won't be easy, but I promise you it's worth it. After all, as I learned to say in English, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, or in my case, with a single word.